Barnaby, do you think that with the problems that we have now, particularly in defence, that Spurs should be giving youth a bit more of a chance with the likes of Ashley Phillips and potentially even Alfie Dorrington?
I think it's really difficult to, and I see it happen a lot, and I understand it, but to say we need to play Ashley Phillips or we need to play Dorrington, none of us, very few of us have seen them play. I've not seen either of them play. I've seen the odd YouTube clip of Ashley Phillips and I guess Dorrington as well, bringing the ball out from the back, and it looks great. But the reality is, of course, Ange sees them play every day, and there's a reason why he went with Dyer and Davis, and I think he'll go with Dyer and Davis again against Villa. And I think obviously Udogie will come in for Royal, and that will make a big difference, as Sonny was saying. I agree with that. And then I think Højbjerg will play 6, and then I think Lo Celso will come in, because I agree with you, Ben. I thought he did look like he was willing to get on the ball and be brave on the ball in that little cameo. And I think we do need someone who's going to be willing to unlock the door a bit more creatively. In terms of the long term and bringing youth in, I agree that I don't think Ange is afraid of it. Threw Brennan Johnson in straight away as soon as he came in. I don't think the age really matters. It's just a matter of, is there any evidence so far to suggest that those youngsters have impressed him enough in training to get a start? It doesn't look that way. Similarly with Valise, who, although seems to be a bit ahead of his schedule because Ange said he wouldn't play for the first 6 months, it doesn't look like he's willing to kind of give him a start or anything like that. And why would he, with Sonny playing, well, other than the Wolves game, playing really well? So if those players are good enough, they will play. That's the truth. But I don't think we're going to see them against Villa personally.
Sim?
I think Barnaby's completely right. I don't think we should be calling or criticising Ange for not using these very young players when we personally aren't there in training. And obviously, I think it's a bit complicated because we've obviously come off regimes of Mourinho and Conte, who are very adverse to using young players. So we're very sensitive to managers who are not willing to use younger players and give them an opportunity. But I think you can't throw that at Ange when he's willing to throw Sarr in immediately. He's willing to throw Udogie in immediately. Van de Ven, who's still quite young himself, he only signed a few days before pre-season.
Van de Ven's the same age as Brian Hill.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah, true. Brian Hill, he hasn't played too much, but obviously Phillips has been on the bench a few times, and also Jamie Donnelly's been on the bench a couple of times as well. He's also a player with Maddison injured. Is he a player people are maybe thinking he can play that number 10 spot, considering the form he's in the under 21s as well? But it's important to remember that we obviously do have other players who are ahead of him in the pecking order right now, like senior players, and maybe Ange feels like they're more ready to step into Premier League football, whereas these youngsters who are 18 who have barely played a Premier League game. It's different with Udogie and Sarr because they've played top level football, haven't they? Udogie's played 2 seasons at Udinese, Sarr's played 2 seasons at Metz. Van de Ven obviously played top level football in the Bundesliga last season. It's very different from that to Phillips, who's played 8 games in the Championship, Dorrington, who's never played a senior game in his career, same with Jamie Donnelly. So it's a bit like comparing apples to oranges when I compare those young players to the young players that we're looking to bring through. So I would love for them to get a chance, and part of me just wants Ange just to throw Phillips in the deep end, just to know. Because there's not much we can learn from having Eric Dyer at centre back. We know what he's going to offer, and if we lose with him there, like, he's an easy scapegoat. Whereas, like, if we throw Phillips there, he's the kind of more of the right profile we're looking for in a centre back in terms of how Ange wants to play, and maybe that's a kind of, if we're looking to fill in what Van de Ven is, what we're losing with Van de Ven not there, maybe someone with the profile of Ashley Phillips is going to be a better solution than just chucking Eric Dyer, who we know can't give us what Van de Ven was giving us. But at the same time, these are very good teams that we're coming up against, and I don't want to throw in Ashley Phillips in against Watkins before he's ready, and all of a sudden he gets cooked and his confidence gets shattered, and all of a sudden you got fans piling in saying, oh, he's not good enough, he should never been playing. And players at that age read these kind of things and they will see that on social media, and I don't want that to kill his confidence. You have to be very careful with these players. I think a lot of managers have said before about throwing players in too early, and then it can kill their confidence, especially as a centre back. I think that's a very it's a position where you need to be very much ready to play that position, like when you step in, because if you're 18 and you make one mistake and it costs you points, that can kill your confidence. It's very different to throwing in a Jamie Donnelly, where if he misses a chance, it doesn't really matter. But if Phillips makes a mistake, that can cost you points, and there's a lot more pressure in that position. So I'm a lot more hesitant if in that question to chuck in a defender at that age, but I'm more willing to give someone like Donnelly a go, to be honest, in the absence of a creative player in the front three, because for me, I think younger players in the attacking line, I think even if they make a mistake, it won't maybe be seen to be costing you points like it would be for a defender.
Yeah, I guess the only difference is that we're so much less stocked in the centre back areas, right? We're just desperate for good centre backs to come in and make a difference. Whereas in that position where Donnelly can come in, we've got a Giovanni Lo Celso who came on and made difference. We could got Kulusevski who we can move inside as well. We got Bentancur who could potentially fill in there. So we've actually got top players that can fill in those roles. So Jamie Donnelly is a bit further down the pecking order than maybe an Ashley Phillips is at centre back. That's just the reality of the situation. But Sonny, do you think that maybe Jamie Donnelly and Brian Hill should be getting more minutes, or maybe more specifically Brian Hill, because he's the one that's been around for a lot longer, 22 years of age? Would you like to see maybe Kulusevski come in the middle and Brian Hill go out wide with Brennan Johnson?
Yeah, I think, I've said myself many a times, I think Kulusevski is good enough to play more centrally. It's a shame. Every time I see him break away, I'm just thinking if he just had a bit more pace on that wing, he would be like a world beater. But that's not his game, so we can't assume that. But with Brian Hill, I feel like he's a tricky one because he's not really been given a chance, has he? He comes on, has a cameo. I think one of his better games was Palace last season, where he threaded through a lovely ball to Kane. I think he is an Ange type winger as well. Like we see, he's got the pace, he's got the dribbling technique. He's just quite weak, isn't he? I know people use that as a stereotype for him, but if he gets more minutes and more chances. And, that forward line isn't set. We've seen, Son's been moved across. Brendan Johnson's been moved across. Richarlison's been dropped. It is... Ange is willing to experiment with that front line. So, I think, give Brian Hill more of a go. Maybe not in this run of games. I think this run of games might be a bit hard for him. But maybe, in that Christmas period where it's going to get quite hard and we have Forest and Everton, I think the 2 games after that, I think why not give them a go? I'd like to see, we've got this squad of players. I'd like to see them all given a chance, because otherwise, what's the point of having a squad?
Yeah, well, lack of squad, more like.
Yeah,
but,
true, yeah.
All right, well, let's move on and let's talk about Richarlison. Richarlison. We've heard links with him being linked to a move to Saudi in January. Barnaby, what's your take on Richarlison? Would you like to cash in on him now? Still believe in him? Where's your head at?
I actually did a transfer episode that's going up in half an hour on the Spurred On Podcast today, and I talked about Richarlison and these Saudi links. I personally don't think we should lose Richarlison unless we get offered 75 million quid. If we get offered 75 million, it's 15 million above what we paid for him, and he wants to go.
What about 70?
It's much of a muchness, that 5 million quid, to be honest. But I just think unless
65?
Unless it's big money, and no, I wouldn't go 65. I just think unless it's big money that we can properly
25.
reinvest, then I honestly don't think we're going to get a better player than Richarlison. Obviously I'm aware that he hasn't scored loads of goals, but I do think, and I probably said it last time I was on here, I do think he's stronger in that left wing position than he is as a 9 at the moment. He made a couple of great assists. The one against Liverpool comes to mind. He seems to be feeling less pressure out there. And honestly, I have lots of Everton friends and family who just say he's an unbelievable player. Playing off the left is perfect for him. And he just needs some confidence. And I think Ange is still the right person to get some confidence into him. And I don't think, certainly from the Premier League, we would get many players of his caliber for, let's say 45, 50 million if that was the money. But on the flip side of that, to play devil's advocate, I really rate Ange's ability to pick players who have the attributes for what he needs. And if he thinks that Richarlison isn't the player to get in behind that he wants off the left, like Brennan Johnson is, and he wants someone like this English kid at Juve who we've been linked with this week, Illing Jr., and he wants someone a bit younger and a bit more pacey and a bit more powerful and willing to get in behind, then Ange will let him go, and we'll see what happens. I trust in Ange's kind of ability to pick a player at the moment. But for me personally, I think there's more to come from Richarlison. So I'm not one of the Spurs Twitterati desperately wanting him to leave.
But, having said that, though, obviously we can all recognise it hasn't worked out for him at Tottenham as of yet. So how long do you actually give it, Barnaby?
I think there's more to it. I think the reality of Tottenham is they haven't bought a striker that's worked in 15 years. Every single player, in fact, arguably every single player we paid big money for up until, Van de Ven, really.
Romero,
And Romero, but especially in the striking position, has not worked. And there's an added pressure and has been since Harry Kane came through, but you can take it back to Soldado. And, that it's difficult to find nines in this era unless you're willing to pay over £100 million, and we're not in a position to be doing that. It's not going to happen anytime soon, I don't predict. So how long do I give him? I mean, in terms of him, he always gives 100%. Like, I think I have problems with players when I think they don't bother anymore, they don't try. I don't see that from him, and I'm not seeing that from any of our players at the moment. So that's my kind of number one position on it, and I would give him as long as Ange gives him.
Fair play. Sonny, where's your head at with the Richarlison situation?
Well, I did a video on my channel about it today as well, and I sort of said if the Saudi clubs who have got, we know how endless their money pit is, if they can cough up the money for him, then I'll be happy to let him go. But
how much we talking? How much we talking, Sonny? How low do you go?
I went as low as 40 earlier.
40, really?
Yeah, I 40, 45, 50 at a push. I feel
it's going up now. 60, 70.
The problem is Barnaby's now got in my head and twisted.
I've sown a seed of doubt.
Because I did say, like, I still think there's one, a good player there, and two, what other options have we got? But then the players that we're being linked with Nusa, the Norwegian winger. We're being linked with Santiago Jimenez as well. Strikers, like, they are players for his position. So it does suggest that, are Tottenham, are Ange, are Johan Lang all thinking maybe this is a thing? But the problem is the rumour's so, like, unambiguous. It's like Saudi clubs want Richarlison. It doesn't even say one name, but I know their own.
It's Newcastle, mate. Newcastle.
Yeah, that's the thing. He'll get loaned back to Newcastle and score against us, and then we'll be head in hands again. But I think if the price is right, then I think we'd be willing to listen. But I agree with Barnaby. I think there is a player there who's got. I actually heard someone say in the summer that Ange prefers strikers like Richarlison to Harry Kane, which I found a bit weird. But
not one person in this world prefers a Richarlison to a Harry Kane.
Richarlison's a better fit for the system.
It doesn't mean I preferred him, though.
True.
Maybe that. But yeah, I'd like to give him a chance. And for timeline, I'd say rest of this season and then one more year. I think one more year. But then we've seen, and Barnaby was related there to strikers, but think about Ndombele. High price we paid for him. No one wants him. We're loaning him out every year. And Daniel Levy never wants to take lower than what we've really paid for him. So then we're stuck. So it'll be more of a, that sort of issue if it comes to it as well, I believe as well. He'll want 75 billion.
Can I just jump in? Can I just jump in quickly? Yeah. I've got a bit of a theory that came to my head, really, which is, when Richarlison was at Watford, he was absolutely the main man, tore it up. When he's at Everton, he's absolutely the main man, the most important name on the team sheet, the player that the fans love the most. And I think when it comes to strikers a lot, they need that love. They need to be like the main man. They need to know that the team are going to just pass to them and they're the most important stuff. The reality is, I think, in the waters that Tottenham are swimming transfer money-wise, we cannot afford to buy the kind of player who is going to be that main man in our team. And especially when Harry Kane was at the club, nobody was going to come in and be the main man as striker alongside him or to potentially replace him if he's injured or anything like that. So it's very, very difficult. And that's why I'm not surprised when I hear the thing saying that, Ange isn't really looking for nines. He's looking for players who can play all across that front three, because then there's always like space for them and always a chance for them. And it doesn't have to be with a lot of the pressure put on them as the 9. However, also I did talk about today in my transfer show about this guy Guirassy, who's like second in the Bundesliga scoring charts for Stuttgart, and he's been a bit of a journeyman, but he's ripped it up this season, and he looks like a kind of more, almost like he's taller, but more like a Defoe, plays off the last man, is on the last shoulder the whole time, and trying to make in those runs in behind. So if we buy him, then that goes against everything I've just said.